Caring for others is an expression of what it means to be fully human.
This podcast is brought to you by ArcMed, fast and focused design and manufacturing.
I'm Greg Maurer, founder and owner of ArcMed.
And I'm Caroline Squatrigo, talent engagement specialist. We are on a journey to grow, learn, and gain expertise in small to mid-sized company culture. Join us.
Okay, Caroline, what's the question of the day?
Today we're going to talk about a day of caring and the benefits that it can have for a company. First, we're going to talk to Fatima Johnson. She is the School on Wheels Indianapolis Community Engagement and Diversity Strategist. We've worked with School on Wheels a bit in the past, so we're excited to talk to her. And then we'll be joined by Beth Cline from United Way. She is their Senior Director of Volunteer Engagement. So I think she'll have a lot of insight into, engaging with the companies and how we can do the best work internally.
Yeah, I'm excited about this, Caroline, because, as you know, we've tried a couple different things, and I'm still not quite sure what the best practice is for ArcMed, so hopefully we can learn a lot today.
I feel like we're close to hitting the mark, but we just haven't gotten there yet. So hopefully this will get us there.
Okay, well, we're very excited to have Fatima Johnson with School on Wheels, a wonderful Indianapolis-based nonprofit that ArcMed has had the pleasure of working with to help support our community. And we're going to hear a story or two about why a day of caring or volunteer day is a good thing for company culture and obviously a good thing for the community. So Fatima, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'll just start by telling you a little bit about School on Wheels. So we are, as Greg said, a nonprofit here in Indianapolis. We support students experiencing homelessness. We provide academic support. We go to where they are. So we have 23 partner locations throughout the city, schools and shelters, where we send volunteers to work with our students. And so far, we've been doing this for 20 years, and we continue to expand each year. In terms of why this is a great opportunity for corporations to volunteer as a day or an ongoing experience, we have so many students who have not been exposed to the privileges that a lot of us take part in every day. And so just to give you an example of what I mean by that. So a lot of our students have been in the cycle of poverty, the cycle of homelessness, and they only know what they see every day, right? And so if they're never exposed to anything else, how will they ever know what other opportunities to exist? And so one of the things that our volunteers do for our students, just as tutors, is by showing up, they're building that relationship. They're showing our students other opportunities by sharing what they do. So for instance, we had a kid who we were asking students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the student responded, I want to work for McDonald's. And the reason that the child responded in that way is because everyone the child knew worked at McDonald's. And so that was his bar. That's what he knew. So his the volunteer tutor working with him, started talking to him about other things like, don't you want to look into being an engineer, all these other things. The student didn't know what he was talking about. And it was just due to not being exposed to anyone who had experienced any other careers. So the tutor quickly started telling the student about what he did, and he was in logistics. And so the next time we asked the student, what do you want to be when you grow up? The student said, I'm going in logistics, even though he really didn't know what logistics was. But it was just, here's something else that I've learned that I could go into. I don't have to work at McDonald's. And so something that small can be very powerful.
So if you think about, Fatima, the tutor did such a wonderful job of exposing that child to opportunities beyond that kid's vision at the time. But that could be an individual volunteer, and as an example, my wife was an individual volunteer for School on Wheels, and it was a wonderful and fruitful and meaningful experience. So, but help us understand, why should a company like Archimed invest corporate time and money in supporting this kind of volunteership versus just saying, hey, after work, go be a tutor? What does it have to do with my company?
All right. So one of the things that we do here at School on Wheels is we provide backpacks, school supplies, uniforms, books. All those things are given to us through donation, through individual and corporate donations, and it allows us to provide those things for all of our students. So as a prime example of why it's so important to receive these items, and snacks as well, that's another thing that we get. When COVID first hit, we quickly realized that our students were going to be wherever they currently were staying, right? And we all take for granted that we have basic school supplies at home. So if you think about it, you can find a pen, you can find some paper, you probably have some markers, but most of our kids, even housed students, do not always have access to those things. And so what we did, because we had a major collection over the summer from corporate partners, we had tons of school supplies and backpacks. And so we loaded all of those up, and we took them to all of our school sites, and we were able to provide all of our students with school supplies and backpacks to prepare them to be at home for virtual learning. In addition to our students, we also provided it to house students who didn't necessarily have supplies at home. In addition to that, because of our corporate partners, our students that did not have access to Wi-Fi or devices, we had several partners that donated devices, donated Wi-Fi's to make sure that our students could have access no matter where they were. And so that's two examples of how corporate partners really can make a difference for our students. And so our students were still able to be successful even while they were virtually learning from wherever they were staying.
So, in thinking about the needs of your organization, they doesn't seem like they could be met without corporate partnership. And it seems clear to me that in order for the community in which our company works and really lives to be as strong as it can be, we need to fulfill our civic duty. So there's a corporate sort of civic responsibility aspect of getting involved. Is that your take on it?
Yes, it is. I mean, our corporate partners, I don't know that they all understand how powerful their impact is when they donate to us in whatever capacity, whether that's dollars or whether that's taking up a collection or whether that's just connecting us to other organizations that can support us. It is extremely impactful. It allows us to continue to grow. It allows our students to get access to things that maybe they would not have otherwise had access to. And so I think we all have responsibility in this realm, no matter what our location is as far as work. But I think our corporate entities really are powerful and instrumental in making sure that we have everything we need to be able to continue to serve our students and to serve more students each year and add to their success.
And so that's fantastic. And again, Argument's been really, it's been a pleasure to meet our civic duty through our partnership with School on Wheels. What do you think a corporation might get as far as a return, other than fulfilling a civic duty? What other returns? Is there a cultural return? Is there a sort of team building return? What other returns do you think we have? Uh, by we could just write a check,
Right.
right? Corporation could just write a check,
Mhm.
and we've done that. Or the corporation could facilitate a day of caring, a volunteer day, packing those backpacks and putting teams of tutors together. Why should we do more than just write the check?
I think it leads to a better understanding of our society as a whole and who's in it and who exists in it and the inequities that exist in our society, because let's be honest, some people will never experience homelessness. They will never be front and center or face to face with someone that has experienced homelessness unless they put themselves in that environment, right? And so I think when we allow or when we have corporate partners involved in this work, it creates this level of education and understanding, which leads to advocacy, which also leads to action, right? And so I think if we can partner and corporations can help spread the word, also write the check, also provide time and talent and materials, I think we will overall see just the impact of what we do in homelessness here in Indianapolis. Our ultimate goal is to end homelessness, which we know that's far off, but I think every little piece that we can do, um, as a village, right, as us and corporations and individuals, will be impactful in the lives of our youth.
Yeah, I think that through philanthropic involvement, volunteership, you grow as a person. So, from a corporate perspective, to have your employees have an opportunity for that kind of personal growth, I think, is a return on the investment. And um, I'm sure that the folks at Archimed that engaged in volunteer activities would probably agree to that. Uh, I certainly have felt personal growth through my volunteer activities. So helping your employees achieve that is definitely one return. Not to mention, as we talked about, the need to meet your civic duty as a corporate citizen. Fatima, thanks so much, not only for taking time to share your perspective on a day of caring, but for all that you and your School on Wheels colleagues do for Central Indiana, really the most vulnerable citizens of Central Indiana, the homeless children. Um, it's wonderful work. Keep it up.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you to Archimed as well for supporting us, and thank you to everyone listening. Spreading the word and just sharing is a lot. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it's very impactful. And thank you so much for having me.
Well, we'll put a link to School on Wheels in the podcast so that people can visit and find out more.
Okay.
So thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, so today we have with us Beth Cline. Beth is currently with United Way of Central Indiana as the Senior Director of Volunteer Engagement, and she's had a long career in nonprofit work, and she was even, Caroline, the Director of Alumni and Parent Programs at your alma mater, Butler.
Really? I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, we're super excited to have Beth on with us, and especially since she has some expert advice on what role a company should play in civic engagement with their employees and philanthropic giving with their employees. So, Beth, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, first, maybe you can just give us a little bit of background on what your role is at the United Way and how you interact with companies such as Archimed.
Absolutely. So I have the fortunate pleasure of working with a great team of people who the way I break it down is we do things with corporate partners, with individuals, and we help connect you to volunteer needs in the community, but also just employee engagement in general. So we might help connect you to a local community-based organization who needs some volunteer needs met, or we might do one of our immersive learning programs that we have to help you kind of learn more about the community in which we live. I think sometimes we forget to actually learn about where we live. We just know where we live and we think what we know is what we know, but we can learn so much more. So my team does a little bit of everything from facilitating programs to setting up volunteer opportunities to creating experiences for companies to engage their employees.
Well, that sounds like the good work of our community, and so thank you for doing it. Um, we're inclined to fulfill our civic duty as an organization rather than just leave it to our employees. But we've sort of stumbled around a little bit and tried different things, and I'd love to get your opinion. So we've tried a matching program. So you pick the 501c3 and we'll match you. We've adopted organizations and spent the year trying to help them meet their needs. So that's financial and volunteer. And we've done these, once a quarter or a couple times a year, days of caring where we'd go to, say, Gleaners and package food, and we're just not quite sure which one, or maybe that we're missing the best one. But what are your thoughts on these various mechanisms to involve our employees into civic and philanthropic endeavors?
Well, I think the first thing is that I'm glad you're doing it. There are a lot of companies out there who don't have any type of like volunteer employee engagement program for their employees, and I think the start is just that you're already doing that. So the fact that you've tried a few different things probably speaks to your different types of employees and what they're looking for. The biggest thing that I think about doing this, and finding the right thing isn't necessarily mean it's going to be one thing. So trying a few different things I think is going to be key, because overall what employees want is a company that shows that they care about the community. And by providing ways for their employees to get involved, I think is just one of the key first steps. So you've mentioned a few of the things that you've done. I think the other thing is setting up a volunteer employee program where volunteers can have so many hours throughout the year. Maybe it's 2 days that they can use those, hours. And so if you're a 7.5 hour day, maybe it's 15 hours they can use throughout the year, however they'd like during the work time. So it's their choice when they want to take the time off to go volunteer. And it could be for a specific organization. Maybe it's a specific event. I imagine we had a lot of people who, if they have volunteer opportunities, used it for the most recent football championship we had in town. That takes a lot of volunteers to put something like that on. But then you also think about different organizations and the work that they're doing every day. It's not always an event that they need things for. There are organizations that just have everyday things that they can use the assistance on. So I'm always a fan of giving employees hours and letting them decide when they use them, because it's them getting to choose where they go, when they go, how they do it, and what that looks like. So I'm always a big fan of that. I love the matching programs. Obviously, that's the dollar side of engaging employees in the work in the community, right? Matching them to where they want to give. But then also, I think the biggest benefit that comes out of having employees the opportunity to do things is it helps grow them. And ultimately, if you're making them happy, they're doing good work, and they're most likely going to stay at your company, and they're going to keep doing that good work.
Yeah, I think I love the idea of the volunteer days that people can use however they want. We've always let people just, take a day if they want to go volunteer, but I don't think we have it formally written out. And I think, it's more like if people ask, we let them, and to just give them the option up front kind of empowers them to do it. I'm curious because recently Greg mentioned we tried a lot of different things. And the past few years, we've moved towards kind of, like Greg said, adopting a company or an organization for the year, trying to really dig in over that year and engage both financially and through volunteer work. COVID has really impacted the volunteer work side of things, so we've tried to get creative. But do you think that provides more engagement with employees when they have a longer span of time? Or is it more about just saying, here's some resources that the company will help support you and you choose where to go?
So it's interesting. I probably early in my career thought the first part, but I think I've moved towards the second kind of idea that you shared. And I say that because if employees are passionate about what they're doing, they're going to find more value in what they're getting to do. And so what you might face if you have a set day and a set time and a set organization is employees are like, this is something I have to do because my company said so, and so I'm doing it. Versus if they have the opportunity to pick something that they are excited about, not that they wouldn't be about what the company has chosen, but if it can be something they personally are invested in, I think they're going to probably get more value out of that than just feeling like instead of going to work, they're going to do something else that day. But for other people, they may not know where to find opportunities either. So having the company provide that for them is also a good benefit as well. But I tend to lean towards if I can pick what I get to do, I'm more excited about it, and I'm more likely to have a better experience doing that.
So let me take your temperature on this. So when we picked a company, it does um, it adds one component, which is team building,
Mhm.
which you don't get if you just go off on your own. But we don't pick it. I don't, as an owner, I don't pick it. What we do is we canvass the employees for causes, and then when the winning cause comes back, then I go do some research and set up a couple of organizations, and then we canvass the group on to pick the organization, and then so there is that buy-in component. So what do you think of that? Does that help overcome your concern about force feeding from the top?
Yeah, definitely. Because you're engaging. That word engagement comes up. It's it's like the buzzword. You could say it a lot, but you're engaging the employees in the experience. You're not just telling them. You're letting them help be a part of it. And time I think you can have the employees be a part of a decision, they'll always have more buy-in than just being told where they're going to go. And they can hear from their fellow teammates. Also, they get to hear about the passions that their other teammates have of organizations in the community, and they get to share that with people. So it does go to the team building aspect versus just showing up somewhere and doing work. You're getting to share kind of what you enjoy and where you'd like to help.
Yeah, and I wanted to follow up on this. What what if we do say, hey, you get X number of hours a year to do whatever you want? We could put a little control on that and say, as long as you can convince, two other employees to do it with you or something like that, or do you think that's not worth it?
Well, I don't know. I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of play that out just to kind of
Yeah.
see what it would do. Because some people may be able to find a couple people. Other people may be like, oh man, I really just wanted to go do this with my family, or I wanted to do this with my friends. And now I'm having to include people that I work with. And so it could go either way. I don't think it's harmful to do that.
No.
I think you tend to find, as long as they get to include their passion in it, you're going to find that employees are they're happier. They, some it even leads to better health if employees can volunteer, and just kind of that improved overall well-being when they have that opportunity, whether it's specifically designed for them or they get to kind of design what it looks like for themselves.
Yeah, and I can appreciate all that. For if we're going to say every employee gets an additional 15 hours a year of PTO that can only be used for charitable volunteering,
Mm.
that cost to our company, depending on what hourly rate you put on it, is really significant. It's over $50,000 a year, probably well over. I'm just doing the math, in my head. So I'm trying to figure out, all the returns we can get in addition to fulfilling our civic duty, and we have the growth of employees and increased employee satisfaction. And if I could just figure out how to also throw in team building, that would be an additional return on that investment. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, I think it's a combination. I think when you're kind of designing what you want it to look like for you and your company and your employees, it doesn't have to be one or the other, right? It can be a combination. So maybe they get one day or 7.5 or 8 hours they get to do. But then the rest is you're going to have, this one specific day where you sign up for the entire company to go do something. Um, we have a big day. We just actually launched our Go All In Day for June 24th, coming up here. I guess that's like 5 months, not quite 5 months from now. But that's a great day for where companies can get their employees together in groups and go out and do something, and our staff included did it last year. We had teams go out and volunteer and do work, and we find great value in that. But we also get time to go volunteer in the community as well. So I think the best way is to have a combination, because you want it to be valuable for you as well, and not just giving everyone free time to go, not work that day, but you want it to make an impact in the community. And so I think putting some parameters around it isn't bad. You just want to make sure you're not putting so many parameters around it that it feels like it's a task versus something that they're excited to go do.
Yeah, I mean, all of this, it makes me think about our golf outing that we put on in 2021. This was a first for ArcMed. The person who organized it did a wonderful job. I know it took a lot out of her, but the idea was we have so many golfers in the building, and I know like we're not the first one to come up with a golf outing, right? It wasn't like a super original idea, but we knew it would get people involved because it's fun, right? Even if you're not a huge golfer, it's a fun day to go out. It has like the team building. We partnered with School on Wheels in Indianapolis because we felt like when we partnered with them in 2020, because of the pandemic, we did not do everything we wanted to do with them. So we were like, let's do a little more. And I know in addition, people were feeling the burn of COVID. So it was a good way to get people together outside. They could distance if they needed to, but give back to a good cause, have fun. And I think to your point, doing a day like that and then also giving people some options, like you said, maybe 8 hours to go volunteer throughout the year, whenever it is. It's a good combo, and we got great feedback from the golf outing, and it's all voluntary, right? So we're not kind of forcing anyone to heavily advertised and encouraged, but not required. So I know that was a fun day for a lot of our people.
Did people have to take PTO to do that golf outing?
No, the way that we structured it, if you were volunteering at the event, you did not. If you were going to the event to golf, we said you did, because if you're going to golf and have fun, you're there to participate in the fundraising. But if you're volunteering, then you can just go and no worries.
So Beth, what do you think of events like the golf outing? That was a ton of company hours. So even if you weren't taking PTO, the amount of planning they went into it, it was a lot. Is that worth it?
Well, I think for the people who you gave each person their own way of being engaged, right? Like, so the people who loved golf got to golf and gave back through a donation, I'm assuming, to participate and like be entered,
Yeah.
right? And the
Yes.
people who are not golfers like myself, I would have volunteered that day because that was my way of being engaged with the company and what we were trying to do. But I also think you gave back in some way to the community as well. Even though it was golf, you were still raising money and you had a purpose for why you were doing that. And I think for companies to be able to do that, it's not always about time, but it's about dollars too. I mean, we all know we need the people to help do stuff, but organizations also need the money to be able to do stuff as well. So I think it's a good combination of doing it. And you gave different ways to engage. If you told everyone they had to go participate and play golf, you might have gotten a really different type of feedback than you did with, giving everyone the opportunity to do either one.
Yeah, we raised a decent sum of money, and School on Wheels was really happy with the outcome. But we didn't track the hours for the planning side. So I wonder whether those hours would add up as far as the cost to the company to something close to what we raised from others. That's something I don't know about. Beth, you mentioned the all-in day. Is that the same thing as what you used to call the day of caring?
It's a little different than what that used to be back. That it's been about 6 or 7 years since we did that, but it is similar in the fact that we are encouraging companies and individuals to sign up for the day, and whether it's for an hour or you want to take 2 or 3 or more hours to participate, getting out there and just participating in the opportunities that the local organizations are going to provide for people to sign up for. So very similar, but just a little different in a few different ways.
So this would be something you would show to your employees and say, for your hours that you get to use here, if you don't have something already on your mind, here are some options.
Absolutely.
And do
Yes.
people send employees sort of one by one or ad hoc, or is this something also that companies, holistically do as a unit?
Both. So we saw a little bit of both last year. We did the last one in September of 2021. And, Caroline, much like you were saying, we were getting people out into the community for the first time in a long time. A lot of organizations still weren't, in the spring last year, even summer, taking in-person volunteers. So it was really one of the first times we got people out and doing things versus just doing it from home or remotely or whatever that might have looked like. But we saw companies get groups together. We saw employees get groups together. So it wasn't necessarily the company specific, but it was, to your point about getting some of their friends that work together and having that team aspect. And then we saw families kind of participating. We try to make sure we have a good variety of opportunities that we partner with our local community-based organizations to provide. And so it's a great opportunity in just whatever way makes sense for, your employees. And we also have different ways of getting companies engaged. If you sponsor a part of the Go All In Day, then we'll help kind of put something together for you. And so there's kind of that monetary, but also time aspect of being a part of the day.
I'm really curious about how we kind of teach this idea, especially in universities. I don't know if corporate social responsibility is really like the right term to encompass all of that, but that's like where my exposure was at college, right? And it was very, very brief. I think it was in an ethics class, and it was pitched like an obligation, right? Like it was like, if you're going to be a company that society doesn't hate, you're going to do some piece of that. And then I got out into the workforce, and I don't love the way it was taught, because it's not, I mean, yes, there is an obligatory factor to it in a sense, but there's also a lot of people behind this that really care, right? And like you were talking about getting that engagement from employees, like employees really care about this stuff. I know from my experience, leadership really cares about this stuff. And I wonder how we could shift that a little bit so that we could, like, put more of a positive spin on it, right? Like, this isn't, I remember walking out of class like, yeah, okay, we have to be good members of the community. Great. But then you get involved in it and it really is important, and you can feel the impact not only to the community, but to Greg's point, there's a team building aspect to it. It's kind of a relief from the workday. It gives you a reprieve to go out and feel good about something that you're doing for the community. There's all these great things around it other than just, throwing a donation at someone. So I'm curious your thoughts on that and maybe how we can change that a little bit.
So we've started using the term strategic philanthropy within our work because corporate social responsibility encompasses so many things. And when we really started to think about what we were encouraging companies to do when it came to their employees and volunteer or engagement experiences, we really realized it was about being strategic in the philanthropy work they were doing. And so for me, that's shifted the thinking a little bit because I hear CSR and I'm like, okay, like that there's so many buckets to what corporate social responsibility is. There's just a lot of things. And one piece of that is the philanthropy aspect. And so I think that's helped us in how we talk about it because it doesn't just mean we have to focus on one thing, but it's about being strategic and how we're engaging employees in philanthropy, which I think goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? The different ways that you do that within your company is going to be what's best for you in terms of, the time and the dollars that you're giving to that. But you're still being strategic in what you're choosing to do and how you're choosing to engage in that philanthropic work in the community.
Yeah, and I think it's important too. I mean, we've talked a whole bunch about, mission, vision, values, culture, how all this is intertwined. And I mean, typically, no matter the topic, it kind of comes back to make sure you're staying true to those values that you uphold, and you want to be living them out. And I think that's the goal here too, right? And making sure that we're doing that. To your point, it makes it more strategic. It makes it make sense. We're all bought into this idea, ideally, and hopefully, like I know a lot of like generation, or Gen Z is really they tend to be very big on that. Like they expect that from companies these days, and I think that's great because they're coming into the workforce and kind of saying, this is something I need you to do for me to feel good about working here. So I think it's naturally happening. But I mean, I've graduated in 2018, so I'm not that far out. But I'm like, hopefully they've done a little bit more to get that in people's brains before you go into the workforce on how to approach this.
I think, uh, first of all, I want to point out the irony, Caroline, of you just generalizing the entire generation, since we just had a podcast episode on how not useful that is. So just want to point that out. Um, I think that there's a couple returns. So one return, and we've covered some of these things, but one return is the betterment of employees, and I can absolutely see that. I think giving back to your community and empowering them to do good works is wonderful. There's a benefit to the company. I also think that we can't pretend like we are in a vacuum at our company. We are in a community, and the stronger that larger community is, the stronger the business environment is, and the stronger the employee pool will be. And so there's a business reason for this too. And then we've been successful in no small part due to the community at large and all the benefits we get from being in this wonderful community. And so I think there's also just sort of a duty. It's sort of like we pay taxes, but this is an additional kind of obligation. So I think about it sort of like that sort of three-legged stool kind of thing. What do you think,
Yeah,
Beth?
you bring up a good point. One of the things I haven't talked about is that brand health, and what this type of engagement with your employees and in the community does for just your brand. Just the community knowing that you're giving back and you're invested in giving back, I think is also really big because I think a lot of times you don't necessarily see that. So if you kind of think about the different ways that you can engage, right? It's for the company, it's for the employees, but it's also for the community. I love the way you just stated that if we do things to better the community that which we live and work in, then collectively we are better. And so having companies realize that we're all tied together. It's kind of, is it the concentric circle, right? If you think about all of us together, like we're all doing things to make a difference in the community, but we each come at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I also hear cities like Indianapolis have a similar dialogue with the donut counties and the suburbs. You can't be a suburb of nothing, and so we can't sit in a silo. But then, so we have all these benefits, and then we have to weigh them against the cost. We
Yeah.
standard sort of business concept, right? Is cost benefit analysis. So, do you encounter companies that actually overtly think about what is this effort costing us, and is it worth it, or do people just hit the I believe button and go forward?
I haven't really been in a conversation where I'm really having to sell. There's always been some element of like, I believe, and then just help me figure out what the best next step is. But I think I believe there are definitely companies out there that have not came to the I believe part, and they're still trying to figure out what really does it mean for them. But I keep going back to like what it means for them. The benefits are what they won't see in terms of like, well, let me put it this way. They'll see it in higher turnover rates if they're not thinking about what their employees and what the community and civic engagement looks like. They will probably see employees who aren't as engaged because they're probably just doing their job and getting their job done and moving on versus finding a way to be invested in the company. And so ultimately, when you think about the overall cost of the time and the and what work you're not getting done when the employees are out doing that. If you think about what actually comes from that, it's actually a much bigger benefit. You just have to figure out what's the best balance for the company to make sure that you're getting the most out of that investment too. We have a lot of we're not a lot, excuse me. There are some companies out there that I've worked with that the way that they engage their employees is by helping them get connected in the community, and so getting them, either trained or getting them experience to serve on a board, right? Because not only does it give the employee the experience, but they're the employee of said company serving on this, local organization board. And so it's that brand health, but it's also giving the employee the professional and personal experience. Some of them just they pick a day and they go do something. Others do the time. They're I think it's Eli Lilly that calls it doers for dollars for doers. I probably have that backwards and I apologize. But they give dollars based on the hours that employees give to the community and to different organizations. So again, there's just so many different ways that you can engage people. And then also just thinking about like when it comes to the passion, like I do a lot of volunteering with the 4-H program. It's a huge part of my background. I was a 10-year 4-H member. I've served on our fair board, our 4-H board. That's passion for me. But at the same time, it also is helping me learn about different aspects of the community and how that program gives back, and then what it teaches people, and then how to just help people understand where they live. So for me, that's my passion. And United Way has recognized that and given us the time to go volunteer so that we find our passion. But then we also do things as a team. We also go out and do things together, and we do our own giving campaign. And the biggest thing is always practice what you preach. If you're going to ask people to do something, make sure you're doing it in return, so that everyone kind of sees that benefit.
Well, thank you so much, Beth. I know this is one of those topics that has a ton of layers to it, and you have to find the best fit for you. But I think you adding all this information and context will really give not only us, but hopefully our listeners kind of a starting point to build the best program for their company. Is there anything else you want to add about just the importance of this and the fact that this work really does matter?
I think the only thing I would add is if you're listening and you haven't thought about it, the first step is starting to think about it and what that can look like, and then from there you can kind of make the best decisions. But you've got to at least first start the conversation, and then you'll figure out what's best.
Well, great. Thank you so much. We loved having you on, and we appreciate your time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Beth, and thanks for all the good work you and your United Way colleagues do for Central Indiana. It's doesn't go unnoticed at our committee. We appreciate you and all that you do.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. You too.
Well, I think we learned a lot, Caroline. What do you think?
Yes, I have a page full of notes here. Um, Travis is feeding the dog right now, so I'm just going to pause for a second.
For
It's okay. We're good.
for what it's worth, I don't think it blipped on the sound
Okay, good.
bar, but
Okay, I'll
so I'll
restart.
just start over
Okay.
to make it easier. You ready, Caroline?
Yeah, I'm
You
ready.
seem a little bit. No, are you ready? You're good.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So I think I feel like we learned a lot today. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have a page full of notes here, and like we said at the beginning, we've tried a lot here at ArcMed. I feel like we put a lot of effort into it, but I don't know if we've quite hit the mark. And I can tell you, Beth has left me with a lot of ideas on where we can go from here and stuff we can try.
Yeah, the first thing I think is helpful, which is shifting from this concept of corporate social responsibility, which is like you do it because you have to,
Yes.
versus what Beth mentioned, which is strategic philanthropy, which is you're doing it because it's wise. You're doing it for reasons, for strategic reasons. I like that concept.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've tried to make a conscious effort for everything that we do within our building to be tied back to mission, vision, values, annual goals, something of that nature to help us, move forward towards our desired direction. And I mean, this plays right into that, right? So there's a way to align these types of activities with where we want to go as a company, get people more engaged, add more fulfillment to their work lives, all of that. And I think that's where we need to start, which makes sense when you think about it. It's just not something we necessarily thought of before.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we covered some benefits, and I think we all agree that there are real benefits. So number one, if we're getting something from somebody like the community, that we should give back to that. That's just natural. Number two, all the benefits from the employee perspective, right? So they're growing and they're finding more satisfaction, and they like working with companies that care about their community, lower turnover, better recruitment. And by the way, I think we should be, if from a marketing perspective, I think we should market our philanthropic efforts so that we do see better recruitment. And then the third benefit is if our community strengthens, then the business community strengthens, and that's a benefit to every business in the community. So that's just good business. And then number four, that's sort of relating to that sort of better recruitment piece, is the company brand. But like any set of benefits, you weigh them against the cost. And in our business, Caroline, we track costs relentlessly, but we didn't do that in our philanthropy. We didn't track the costs of how many hours and how many meetings and how many all that, which is, I think, sort of a miss for us.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have the number of the lump sum that we've donated to organizations in the community, but when it comes to volunteer hours, planning hours, I mentioned it. We organized a golf outing last year. I know a lot of planning went into that. I can't even fathom the number of hours. I know the organizer, I think, spent like late into the night planning this thing. So I can imagine that those really add up. And I mean, we know the number that we raised and we were able to give back. But to your point, how do those compare?
Yeah. So one idea that we haven't tried that Beth surfaced was this concept of adding PTO that employees can use only for charitable volunteering. And it gives a lot of the returns, except unless you put some constraints on it, it doesn't create team building because they're off on their own doing this work. And so you sort of have to pick your poison. You forego that team building or do the team building, but restrict, the employees' choices. What are your thoughts there?
I think there are ways to do both. I wouldn't want to put too many constraints on it, but I think encouraging people to go in groups would be great. I mean, we use Microsoft Teams, so my first thought is always if we could have like a philanthropy Teams channel where if you are planning on going to volunteer somewhere, maybe you just type in, "Hey, I'm going over to," in my case, it'd be like an animal shelter. Does anyone want to go hang out with dogs with me for an afternoon? Something like that. I don't love the idea of making it a mandatory part of getting the PTO, just because I think first and foremost, let's encourage people to go out into the community. If we can get people to do it in groups, which honestly, I think most people would think as of more fun and a little bit less intimidating. I'm an introvert. I don't like walking into a room of people I don't know with no support. So I would love to get a group together to do something like that. Can be helpful. I have an idea though of how we could kind of combine, you know, a little bit of Archimed's strategically organized philanthropy with some individual freedom involved. I wonder if we selected like 3 to 5 local organizations and we say, hey, we have $20,000 that we're going to donate this year. You know, every vote that this organization gets, we'll give it a percentage of that money. Then we kind of just divide it accordingly per people's wishes, and then kind of task the people that chose those organizations to arrange volunteer events. And I don't know if that would be successful, but I like it could be worth trying. And then it would, people could choose where money's going. They could choose which organizations they want to support. Archimed could have some say in choosing, which organizations, and we can kind of swap them and mix them up every year or
Yeah,
quarter or whatever.
Caroline, this might have been before you joined us. I can't remember, but one of our efforts was picking a certain number of charities and then having them pitch. So they'd come in and they'd tell us all about the company, the charity, and et cetera, and that we had, a matching program where we would give a minimum amount to each, and then depending on how everybody else gave, we would give more. So we tried that, and I think it was successful, but we didn't get a lot of people to come in to hear the pitches. For some reason, we didn't do a great job of getting enthusiasm around it.
I remember that, and I think it came down to we had kind of this preliminary, you guys donate and we'll match. And that's where people were saying, I'd rather donate my time than my money. I mean, everyone's in a different financial situation. And I think that was a little bit of a barrier to participation. So maybe something we can workshop a little bit. I know our goal in that was, let's get some joint participation here, encourage people to get more involved and kind of put some skin in the game, like my dad likes to say, and have that level there. So yeah, I mean, I think Beth mentioned it. We stopped recording, but she mentioned it. Pay attention to what people participate in. If you're trying multiple things, just if nobody participates, that's kind of your gauge for if this is successful, right? So keep trying things and monitor the participation and then pivot as necessary.
So one thing you could do is for this idea of extra PTO, if your PTO is worth, $10,000, then you can either take the PTO, and the company's essentially donating $10,000 of work hours since we're paying you. Or you could say, I don't want the PTO. I'm not a volunteer. I'm not comfortable, but I'd like you to direct a similar figure to donate in cash to another charity. Maybe that's an idea.
Yeah, I like that idea because we have done not quite this, but we've done kind of things in line with this in the past. And a lot of people just leave this money on the table. And I always feel bad because it's Archimed's money that we're saying we would love to donate to a charity of your choice. And when people just kind of don't take the opportunity, it makes, I'm like, there's just money that could be going out there that's not. So I've always thought of adding a line like, if I don't hear from you in a week, it's going to X organization so that we can make sure it's being directed to a good cause. But I like that idea as well, because that way, it's kind of like a passive form that still gives people an opportunity to give back in some way.
And then there's also the concept of board service. So maybe you're not digging holes for trees for keeping Indianapolis beautiful, but maybe you serve on their board. Caroline, this is one of those episodes where something tangible is going to come out of this. We're going to make actually a change in how we approach strategic philanthropy based on what we learned today. And I love those. I love the episodes that drive us to change.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we do have a lot of episodes that are kind of this higher level thinking of, how do we approach things in theory and how do we put those into actionable items. This one is very clear cut, where it's like, here's what we can really do to make a change. we're in the position of being able to implement some of this at ArcMed and kind of experimenting with it to see what works best for our people. On our next episode, we will talk about holiday parties. Do they really have an impact, or do they just make us feel good?